So that's a lot to handle in 10 minutes. But let me read you some voices of people who have lived this life. And no doubt, I can't make with any certainty that this characterizes the family with whom you're working, but for sure they were fleeing that recent history and more distant past. So let me read you, just so you hear some folks. Remember at the beginning it said over 5 million. It's 5.4 million people have died since 1998 in this area. Most Americans have absolutely no idea of the proportion of this. It really is, to draw a sad analogy, close to the 6 million of the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. And yet, most Americans have no idea. My students, when they read Adam Hochschild's book, King Leopold's Ghost, which I heartily recommend, it's still available, it's a bestseller, about the deep history of Belgian involvement in the Congo. But when they read that book, and these are freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors at the university, they say, why is it when I was studying world history in high school, I never had anything in my books about this? So you all are way ahead of so many people, simply by having your consciousness directed at helping a family that knows this history deeply, and probably in terms of their refugee status well. But here's a voice from a man from Goma, northeastern Congo. We don't have security. At any moment, you can lose your life. That's it. And with the police, we are scared. And with the military, we are scared. 90% of the victims of the violence of these years have been civilians, dying from preventable causes, partly because of refugee camps, which are breeding grounds for disease, including cholera, a preventable disease from which you can recover if you have adequate hydration and good care. But 90% of those 5.4 million were civilians, and only 10% from actual violent action among combatants. Here's a child from Eastern Congo thinking about this. I am afraid of hunger. I only eat once a day. Some nights I don't eat anything, and I am starving. So, there have been a number of campaigns that have targeted civilians in order to create so-called ethnic cleansing, clearly genocide. Over 1.5 million adult women and female children have been victims, as you heard in the film, of rape, and mostly in the east of the Congo. Here's a rape survivor. They know by raping women, they are going to destroy the whole structure of the family. From there, women will get pregnant, and there will be no father to support them. And then those children end up in the streets, and they don't go to school. There's other grim stuff which I don't need to share given the time, but I think the thing for me, my particular area of interest is children and the socialization of children and children who take care of other children, true of most sub-Saharan African families. You saw some pictures of the children coerced into being combatants. There is a conscientious effort in many of these villages and towns to try to re-socialize children who come back from 4 to 5 years of acting as soldiers or as prostitutes. And here is a former child soldier in Kivu, which is eastern Congo. I was on my way to fetch water in Kisibuma when 2 M23 soldiers arrested me. They took me to Rugomba, where I was trained to use a firearm. And then a woman saying, "The rebels are here because of the gold." And then she laughs quietly, and she says, "And we suffer for the gold." This reminds me of the way people often feel who are not themselves the extractors of natural resources, but are aware that that's what's partially behind so much of this internecine and intergroup violence, control of those resources. They often refer to this as suffering from water or suffering from gold. It's not, the locution is not, we need water, everybody needs water, or we want the gold. It's that because of the gold, because of the difficulty of getting clean water, we all live with that in our bodies. It is who we are, suffering from that. And there is no way out, right, from this if you don't have something like a community like yours. And then one last thing about theft from a female resident of South Kivu province. And she said, on the way back, we were ambushed by rebels, and they took us into the forest. They took everything we had, even the cooking oil. And that, what I find, I'm so moved by that. For a woman to not have cooking oil is pretty much not to be able to feed your children. So again, the language is simple and straightforward, but the intimations are not only of trauma, but of wanting to believe it could be different, but it isn't. So that's a taste of those voices. Maybe what I should say is that one of the challenges in the Congo as a whole is that it's bordered by 9 different countries. And in the east, those countries, as you saw from the film, were tremendously altered in their politics by the Rwanda Genocide of 1994. There had been a previous genocide, but the 1994 one was 800,000 to 1 million people slaughtered. And the consequence was that the Hutu, who were the perpetrators of much of the slaughter, fled into eastern Congo to escape the revenge of the Tutsis who had been victimized. The Tutsis who, by the colonists, were set up as the educated elite. Notice you probably have thought about this, but the Tutsi are aquiline featured, tall and lean, very, if you will, attractive to the European imagination. They look with a different color skin like the European colonists. The Hutu, on the other hand, were much more African, that is, sub-Saharan African in feature, and they were the majority. The Tutsi were 10%, 15% of the population. All the education went, most of it, to the Tutsi. All the offices went to the Tutsi. And it was no accident then, in the late 20th century, there were two major upheavals with the Tutsis being targeted. Finally, they won after the massacre, and by 1995 they were sending in troops into eastern Congo to try to catch the escaped agents of that violence. So it's not just that, but it's also the resource contest, the diamonds, the gold. The future of so many people depends on being able to have control of those resources. And so these very local communities, notice the M23, the Mai Mai, these are local militias, trying to protect those resources from those who would prefer to just come in, extract them, get them into the international market, and support their continued status as a militia or as a community. It's pretty tough when you're a child and a woman, a non-combatant, to find a place for yourself in all of this. I want to just take a look at the time here. All right, I'm almost out. I've got to get that 4-minute animated video up for you. But one last thing, to Linda, on a positive note, there are, as it said at the end, a number of initiatives that are making a difference, that are trying to move away from this shadow of the past, both deep and more recent. One of them is something called the Eastern Congo Initiative, ECI. You can Google it. There's a lot on the internet about it. But one of the reasons it's probably gotten a lot of attention is that Howard Buffett and USAID gave money to help them get started, and one of their celebrity advocates who works there and goes there regularly is Ben Affleck. In the recent, since 2012, they've tripled the incomes of nearly 5,000 coffee farmers. They've attracted Starbucks to purchase over 100 tons of specialty coffee that the traditional farmers have produced. They have, they now are connected to a chocolate company in Seattle, Theo Chocolate. Theo chocolate bars, buy them. It's fair trade. It's delicious. It goes right to as much of it as they can to the Congolese farmers. 9 million chocolate bars have come out of there from 1,300 tons of Congo cocoa. So this is the kind of effort that is making a difference right back to the local communities. Again, getting back to this idea that Africa for us is a continent, but for those who live there, it's local communities who have faced these kinds of struggles, but are now looking to the prospects because of their own hard work and their understanding of how to connect their production with an international market that is making a huge difference. In 2017, they're going to launch something called the Congo Farmer Trust, which will try to establish a financial foundation for continuing work, regardless of who is there or not. It will be something perhaps to follow on Google. I don't know what the date is in 2017, but they've been working on it for a long time to try to enhance their advocacy of Eastern Congolese families and their local economies. So that's a start. Let me see if I can quickly give you another taste of this, of the positive side of things. They've done an animation with line drawings of him talking about him discovering that, as he said, I've had my life, here I am, still a young person, I've had just pretty much what I want in life. Success and happiness and resources, but I was tired of just me making my success. So he found this opportunity in Eastern Congo. He's been an instrumental part of it, and it's a profile of how he was drawn into this and ultimately began to see that his own need to do good beyond his own self-interest has changed his life. And it's through the cooperation and interest of these folks, his hosts in Eastern Congo, who see their work with him as making a difference in their lives as well. So it's a good 4-minute profile, I think. It gives you a sense of the prospects of the good. Anyway, that's my time, I'm afraid. Will we have time for questions afterwards?
Yes.
Mike? Okay. Okay, is that good? Thank you. I'm just going to jump in here. Another thing to keep in mind is that most families, there is a horizontal care network among peers that is independent of adult-child relations. And I think that that means, for example, when I'm thinking about this family who I've not met, I would look right away if I had a question about what the littlest child need. Our impulse, being most Americans, is to turn to the parents. If you turn to the sibling and acknowledge that they have a good deal of authority, and probably in a refugee experience in the camps, were living much of their subsistence as a peer group, and that is a place of certain knowledge and authority that it might not be bad to remind them that you're looking to them for some information or some help as much as to the parents.
Good.
Yeah, this is a long way from the Congo, but greeting sequences in African communities are very important. Not just because they seem formulaic, but actually the signification of them is deep. And one of the ones that is surprising is that your grandmother may have died yesterday and you may have cut a deep slash in your thigh out with your machete, and when you greet somebody says, the first thing they'll say, at least in Mandinka, is, "Are you at peace?" And the answer is, "There is only peace." And then you say, "Are there any troubles?" And the answer, gash and leg, grandmother dead, is, "There are no troubles." In other words, for so many people who've lived this life and adapted to the traumas of them, the world is big. This slash, that loss, it's hard. But life is full of bounty as well as blows. And so there are no troubles. In the context of things, this is small. And so I think that's something also to keep in mind. What we've given you is a heavy dose of kind of real psychology, real trauma. But there is a sense in this adaptability to life's bounty and blows that you can never predict. So, tanawo tanante, there are no troubles. The other thing I was going to say is, our tendency to think is when we visit as visitors that we have to somehow have something to say and do something and be engaged. Just to come with somebody and just to sit with them. Sometimes that's all that is expected, just to have you present. The Mandinka used to come in and sit with me while I was writing my field notes at night. And they just, at first I thought I had to engage them. I'd think, oh my gosh, I have a whole day's worth of what happened, and I've got to write it down on this manual typewriter. This is before computers. And they'd come in and I'd think, and then I realized, no. I remember from my Peace Corps experience, you go to somebody's house and you just sit. You might greet them, you might have a few comments, and then you just sit. And 2 hours later you say, well, I guess I'm going to go now. And then the host says, you're going now. And you say, yeah, I'm going now. And then the host says, greet the people of your household, and off you go. So again, I think relaxing about what's expected of you in a world where sociality is not just interactive, it's just being present to each other. There are no troubles. Being together is all there needs to be sometimes.
Thank you. That's it. Maybe one